welcome to Library Scented Life. If you're new here, my name is Sydney. Thank you so much for coming to my channel, and let's get right into it. So today I'm going to be doing my September wrap-up, so I'll be talking about all the books I read this month and what I gave them for ratings, and a little bit of synopsis to find out if you would be interested in reading them as well. So the first book I read this month was Less by Andrew Sean Greer. So I read this for my book club with my friends that we do every month, and this was better than I expected it to be. So this follows a 50-year-old man who is dealing with the fact that his ex-boyfriend is marrying someone else, and he is heartbroken over it because he's still in love with him. He actually uses his job, he's a writer, so he uses different interviews and presentation opportunities to go around the world and avoid the wedding, and we're seeing into his past and who he is as a person and how he feels about love. And it sounds like you wouldn't be able to relate to him, but I actually had a pretty easy time relating to him. Because he is a 50-year-old man, I was not expecting to relate to this at all, but actually I could empathize with his character very easily, especially the second half of the book. The first half, he seems a bit whiny and just like, you have nothing to complain about, dude, what are you talking about? But the second half of the book really redeems it, and I did enjoy this. I gave it 3 stars. So the second book I picked up this month is one that I have been meaning to read for the longest time, and that is The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, and that's the first book in the Percy Jackson series. This was a 4-star read for me. I really do love middle grade and stories about friendships. I feel like I'm going to like the next books a bit more than this one because the friendships are more developed now. This was kind of the meeting everyone and getting to know the characters, but I feel like I will really enjoy the rest of the series, so I'm looking forward to pick up the next one. So the third book that I picked up in September was Horns by Joe Hill. So Horns is about a guy who wakes up and he has horns growing out of his head, like kind of devil horns, and he realizes that anytime he talks to someone, they admit their greatest desires and their darkest secrets to him, and they tend to ask him if they can act on their deepest desires that are wrong. It's a really intense look at the dark side of humans and everyday people that we know. And there is also a second half of the plot in which his girlfriend actually was murdered the year before, and everyone thinks that he did it. So he's trying to use the power that everyone's admitting things to him. He's trying to use that to figure out who actually killed her and what actually happened. So I gave this 3 stars. I actually enjoyed the first half much more than the second. I enjoyed seeing the dark side of all these people he's known all his life in this small town. I enjoyed that part. I found some of them funny and some of them were really disturbing, but the second half with the whole murder mystery, it just got a little bit boring for me and a bit repetitive. I did still really enjoy the concept though, and the movie is really good. I actually saw this one. It stars Daniel Radcliffe. I did enjoy that. There's a lot of warnings for content in terms of gory things and really disturbing elements in the human nature. So yeah, that was 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read in September was The Thing About Jellyfish by Ali Benjamin. This book has been sitting on my shelf for months. I have not picked it up. Every time I look at it, I just don't feel like reading it. When I drew it out of a hat on my TBR video that I did a month ago, I didn't feel like reading it at all. So there was no motivation to read this, but this ended up being 4 stars for me. So this story is a middle grade that follows a little girl named Susie, and we are looking at it from her perspective, almost like reading her journal. So this is following Susie. She's a 7th grader, and she just lost her best friend to a drowning incident, and this follows her going through the grief process, and she's kind of writing a letter to her best friend who passed away, and that is what we're reading. So Susie deals with this by actually developing selective mutism, so she doesn't speak to the people around her, and she actually finds something that really interests her, which is jellyfish, and she decides to study jellyfish for her science project, particularly the question, did jellyfish kill my friend? Because her friend drowned, she actually thinks that she was stung by a jellyfish and that was why she drowned. So she is doing this science project and dealing with her grief and just coming through this hard stage in her life as a 7th grader, and I found this very realistic. As someone who works with children and has studied children, I found her dealing with grief and the way she spoke, the way the author wrote her, to be very true and authentic, and I really appreciated this, and I think if you know anyone who's younger who's dealing with grief, this might be a nice book to gift them and for them to help process their own emotions through. So the next book I picked up in September was Sword of Destiny by Andrzej Sapkowski. So this is the second book, or the second prequel in the Witcher series. I actually listened to the audiobook for the first one, and the second one I read physically, and I enjoyed reading it physically a lot more. The audiobook was really good, but since it is a fantasy world with so many different elements, I find it easier to focus on it when I'm reading it physically, so that was a better experience. This I rated 3.5 stars, maybe 3.7. I did really enjoy it. It is still a prequel, so it's very separate stories that aren't very related. So if you didn't hear me talk about the Witcher series before, this is following a guy named Geralt who is a witcher, which is someone who kills creatures who are dangerous to others for money usually. And it's just following him in this fantasy world that has all the fantasy creatures you can think of, which is probably my favorite part of the series. But yes, so the first and second books are actually more short stories, so it's kind of like an anthology and with a connecting story every few stories, if that makes sense. So this was the second prequel, and I just got the first 3 books of the official series, which I'm very excited to read. So I think I just gave it 3.5 stars because it was an anthology and I kept getting really into the story, and then it would skip to something completely different and I wanted to keep going because they were the same character, as opposed to usual anthologies where it's a different character and story altogether. But yeah, so 3.5 stars, and I think the next one, where it's a continuous story, I will enjoy a lot more. So the next book I picked up in September was Blue Lily Lily Blue by Maggie Stiefvater. This was the best book in the Raven Cycle so far. I enjoyed this so much. This is a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed that it was more creepy, and it wasn't just we were investigating something to do in the future, we were in it. If you haven't read the Raven Cycle series, it is an amazing paranormal YA that follows an amazing cast of friends and characters that truly feel real, and it has supernatural elements as well as historical fiction elements. It's a really great read, but yes, this one was the best for me. I know the characters really well by now, so I really connected with their stories and with what was happening, and I just found it a really good read for September and for coming into fall time because it was kind of eerie. Yes, so I really enjoyed that one. That was 5 stars. And I've only completed one other book for September. I started a couple other ones, but I'm still like halfway through them, so I'm not going to include them in this video. I didn't get a lot of reading done this month, unfortunately, but I did get all of my TBR done and then 1 extra. I was just expecting to get like 3 or 4 extra books on top of the TBR. So the last book I completed in September was You by Caroline Kepnes. So this book is another really creepy and September-October read. This follows Joe, and you read it in the perspective where he's talking to you as the reader, but your name is Beck. So he is obsessed with this girl Beck, and he follows her and watches her through her window, and he's super obsessed with her, and it's really creepy. And he's done this before. He's a serial stalker, so you're reading him write to you, so that just adds that creepy element that is not usually in horror books, so I found this really unique. I gave this 4 stars. I didn't realize this was a series. I would have preferred it to be a one-shot kind of book, but I am looking forward to find out what happens next. So that is all the books that I read in September. I read a total of 2,525 pages, which equals out into about 84 pages a day. So usually my goal is 100 pages a day, so I did a bit less like I expected, but that's okay. 84 pages is still pretty good, and 7 books is more than the average person, not on BookTube, but just in my life in general. So I'm still proud of myself. I'm going to try to read a lot more in October. There are a lot of new releases that I'm really excited to read. Leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite read in September was. Mine was Blue Lily Lily Blue. What was your favorite in September, and what are you expecting your favorite to be in October? Thank you so much for watching, and I'm so excited to see you in my next video. Bye!